I can't stay. Back never. 5 words scribbled on fish wrapping paper, grease-stained, a silver scale pressed flat in the corner. Left on the kitchen table beside a half-empty bottle of formula. Not taped, not folded neat, just lying there like it belonged. I read it once, blinked, read it again. By the 3rd time, it struck like a slap across the face. My daughter's cry tore through the crooked little house, shrill and raw like a siren. I couldn't shut off. My knees buckled, but I grabbed her anyway, one arm cradling her tiny head, the other crushing that filthy scrap of paper. My shirt was wet. Formula sweat, maybe tears. I couldn't tell anymore. My name is Jonas Miller. I'm 35 years old. I used to work the decks of a trawler out of Newport, Oregon, nets ripping skin from my hands, storms leaving salt in my bones. When the company folded, I thought losing that job was the hardest blow I'd take. I was wrong. Hardship wasn't unemployment. It was this note. It was Clara, 23 years old, walking out on me and on Lila, not even a month after bringing her into the world. The house reeked of fish and mildew, wood warped by decades of ocean wind. The crib hand-me-down, sanded by my own hands, creaked with every wail. Paint chipped where Clara once taped a paper star. Lila's face was crimson fists pumping like she wanted to punch her way back into the womb that had already rejected her. Outside, gulls screeched over the harbor as if they knew. I called Clara's parents. Her mother's voice was sharp before I spoke a word. "We warned you," she snapped. Then her father came on colder than the Pacific. "You chose this, Jonas. Don't drag us in." The line went dead. No gas money, no crib sheets, no sympathy. Just judgment, same as always. I sat there, baby screaming in my arms, the note burning in my palm. The refrigerator groaned when it closed, like even the appliances were done with me. Rent due in 7 days. No job, no wife, no family to lean on. Just me and this furious little life who never asked for any of it. I wanted to scream back, wanted to torch that note and watch the words curl into ash. Instead, I laid it flat on the counter, stared until my vision tunneled, heart pounding like a hammer in my chest. Lila's cries softened, then sharpened again, a rhythm that told me collapse later. Not now. Not ever. That was the night I learned survival doesn't always roar. Sometimes it starts with a greasy scrap of paper, a baby's cry, and the choice to keep breathing when everyone else walks out the door. Morning came without sleep. The note still sat on the counter, greasy corners curling, daring me to move it. I didn't. I carried Lila in one arm and poured coffee grounds with the other, though the pot had more rust than glass. The first sip tasted like burnt rope, but it kept my eyes open. Rent was due in a week. 7 days to conjure money out of thin air. I walked the docks with Lila strapped to my chest, asking for hours. The trawlers were tied up nets, coiled like dead snakes. Men I'd worked beside stared at their boots when I asked. One said the company still owed him 2 paychecks. Another said his wife had already packed bags. Nobody had work. Nobody had answers. Back at the house, a note waited under my door. This one typed. Clean. Rent past due. 10 days to vacate if not paid in full. Signed in sharp black ink. Ruth Hargrave, property manager. She was a widow, white hair pinned neat, always walking her little dog in a coat that cost more than my month's wages. She never smiled when she passed my porch, just a clipped nod like she was inspecting damage. I called her number. She answered on the 2nd ring. Jonas Miller. Yes, ma'am? You're solo now, she asked, flat as a receipt. Yes. Then you know the rules. 10 days. After that, I change the locks. The line clicked dead. No space for pleading. I set the phone down, stared at the peeling wallpaper. 10 days. Lila whimpered in her sleep, cheek pressed against my shirt. I thought about foster care, about dropping her at the county office with a blanket and walking away. My chest went hollow just imagining it. That night I wrote a list on the back of an old grocery flyer. Jobs. Loans. Sell boat gear. Call brother. By midnight, the ink bled from my hand, sweating. My brother didn't answer anyway. I left a voicemail that sounded like begging, then erased it before I hung up. Pride's a stupid thing, but it's all I had left. 2 nights later, I cracked. Lila screamed for an hour straight, lungs like sirens, face purple with rage. I couldn't calm her. I laid her in the crib and stepped outside, shut the door, leaned against the salt-bitten siding. The ocean wind cut through my shirt. For a second, I thought she'd be better off without me. Someone else could give her warm, milk-clean sheets, a life without notes taped to doors. Then it happened. The crying stopped. I rushed back inside, terrified something was wrong. She was lying there, tiny fists unclenched, staring at the ceiling with eyes too wide for her face. Then out of nowhere she laughed. Just a gurgle, quick and light, but it cracked through me like lightning. I dropped to my knees beside the crib. My vision blurred. That sound was proof she hadn't given up even if I had. I pressed my forehead to the railing, whispered, "All right, kid. You win. I'm staying." Outside, the ocean kept pounding rocks. Ruth's notice still clung to the door. 10 days. But Lila's laugh echoed louder in my head. And for the first time since Clara left, I felt something stubborn rise in my chest. Not hope, exactly. Something rougher. Refusal. I still heard that laugh the next morning. It clung to me like salt on skin. 10 days, Ruth's warning echoing in my ear, but Lila's sound, small, defiant, cut sharper. I brewed coffee thick as tar, fed her what formula I had left, and sat at the table staring at numbers that didn't add up. Then came the knock. 1 rap. Slow. Heavy. I opened the door to Ezekiel Harper Zeke, to anyone who dared speak to him. 65, maybe older. Skin like old rope hands, scarred from knots and engines. He lived 2 lots over in a rusted shipping container he'd gutted into a home. Folks said he'd sailed tankers, fought storms, maybe even wars. He never said. He just nodded when passing, until that morning. "You're burning daylight," he muttered, already stepping inside like he owned the floorboards. He smelled of diesel and salt. No hello. No question if he could enter. He set a dented metal lantern on my table with a thud. Brass rim glass cracked, but whole. This saved my hide off Kodiak. "Keep it. Light won't quit on you." I stared, unsure if it was a gift or some strange test. Lila whimpered in her crib. Zeke's eyes flicked to her, then to me. "You feeding her regular best I can," I said. "Not enough," he grunted. Then, with a sailor's precision, he lined out a plan on the back of Ruth's rent notice. 2 hours between feeds. Nap when she naps. Ration powder. Warm water stays warm if you prep it right. He tapped the lantern. Matches, too. Don't trust power here. I wanted to tell him I didn't need orders. But the truth was, my chest loosened as he wrote. Simple lines, no judgment. Not a lecture about Clara. Just directions like fixing a broken rigging. He left as sudden as he came. No goodbye. Just, "I'll be back tomorrow. Don't waste the light." That night, I lit the lantern. The glow was steady, soft against peeling wallpaper. Lila's face in the crib looked calmer than I'd seen since Clara left. I sat with the list Zeke scribbled. Feed, clean, rest. Over and over. A rhythm. By the 3rd day, I found myself moving different. Up at dawn, bottles lined like soldiers' diapers, stacked crib sheets, washed and folded. I even swept the floor, something Clara used to nag about. Each task small, but stacked together, they felt like scaffolding holding me up. Neighbors started noticing. The woman across the street nodded when she saw me hanging a blanket to dry. A kid on his bike slowed down, waved at Lila, gurgling in the stroller. For the first time, I didn't feel like the whole block was watching me fail. I still had no money for rent. Ruth's deadline loomed like a storm cloud, but in the middle of it, Zeke's lantern burned, and with it, a rhythm I hadn't known I was starving for. I tucked Lila in lantern glow, catching her curls, and whispered, "We're not done yet." And for once, I almost believed it. Zeke's lantern burned steady for a week, but the rent notice didn't stop glowing in my head. 10 days turned into 5, then 3. I walked the town with Lila strapped to my chest, knocking on doors, chasing hours that weren't there. The fish plant had laid off half the crew. The lumber yard said, "Come back after winter." A gas station manager stared at Lila, shook his head, and muttered something about liability. Every no landed like a stone in my gut. By the third afternoon, I was half broken, carrying her down Main Street, while she chewed the corner of my shirt. My arms ached, my pride already gone. That's when I stopped in front of a shop I'd passed 100 times, but never entered Crew's Lock and Key. The windows were smeared with grease, the doorbell hanging crooked. Inside, the place smelled of metal dust and oil, like a machine had been grinding without rest. Behind the counter stood Isabella Cruz. 40, maybe. Black hair pulled back in a braid, dark circles under her eyes, sleeves rolled high. She looked like someone who hadn't had time for excuses in years. She watched me longer than felt polite. "Looking for work?" she asked. Her voice was low, steady, no wasted words. "Yes," I said, though it felt more like begging. Her eyes flicked to Lila. "And daycare?" I shook my head. "Figures," she muttered, then disappeared into the back. I thought she'd written me off like the others. Instead, she came back with a brass padlock and set it on the counter. "Open it," she said. I stared. "I don't try," she cut in. She handed me a set of picks. My hands shook as I fumbled Lila squirming against my chest. After 2 minutes of scraping metal, I heard the faintest click. The lock popped. Isabella didn't smile, but her eyes shifted something close to approval. "Not bad for a first try," she said. "You want to eat, you learn fast. I need a trainee. Nights, weekends. Pays garbage until you prove you're steady." "You steady?" I thought of Clara's note, Ruth's warning, Zeke's lantern. I looked at Lila's spit-slick grin. "I can be," I said. That night, Isabella handed me a dented toolkit. "Don't lose it," she said. "Tools are memory. You take care of them, they'll take care of you." I walked home in the dark lantern, swinging in one hand, kit in the other, Lila asleep against my chest. For the first time since Clara left, I wasn't walking empty. I had weight in my arms, tools light, and a baby who laughed when the world said no. The rent was still due, the fridge still groaned when it shut, but under the lantern glow I placed the toolkit beside Lila's crib like an offering. A start. Not hope. Not yet. But a crack in the dark, big enough to step through. The first week at Crew's Lock and Key nearly broke me. My hands cramped, my back ached, and every night I came home smelling of metal filings and cheap oil. But I had work, and a dented kit of tools that actually belonged to me. Lila was too young to understand, but every time I bent over her crib with sore shoulders, she grinned like I'd built her a palace instead of just making rent. She started laughing more, first at the ceiling fan, then at my clumsy faces, then at the squeak of the lantern handle when I wound it too tight. Those sounds carried me through the nights. They were proof she was growing in spite of me, not because of Clara. Zeke came by most mornings uninvited, but expected. He'd stand at the stove, arms folded, grumbling about how I stacked bottles wrong or folded diapers sloppy. Then he'd fix them without saying much more. One morning, he left a bag of coffee on the counter, muttering, "Too weak, yours tastes like dishwater." Another day, he brought a blanket stitched from old sailcloth. He never said it, but the man had become Lila's unofficial grandfather, gruff and steady, the kind of presence that didn't need permission to care. Isabella was different. She didn't hover, didn't scold. She watched. She noticed when I came in bone-tired, when Lila's clothes were too tight when I forgot to eat. "Take 5, she'd say, shoving a sandwich across the workbench. "Tools don't matter if you collapse." She showed me how to file a key blank smooth, how to spot a lock ready to give before wasting minutes on it. She had patience where Zeke had bark. Between them, I was held together. One Saturday, I caught Lila tugging at Zeke's beard while he pretended to snore on my couch. She laughed so hard she hiccuped, and he cracked one eye open, winked, then went back to fake sleeping. I leaned against the door frame and thought, this is family. Not the kind you're born into, but the kind that shows up anyway. Still, there were nights I doubted it. Nights when bills stacked high and the fridge rattled empty. But then Isabella called me reliable after a long shift, and it felt heavier than any paycheck. Then Zeke slapped my shoulder after I fixed a lock without fumbling, muttering, "Not useless after all." Praise disguised as insult, but it carried weight. By the time Lila learned to toddle, she was running toward them both. To Zeke's calloused hands, to Isabella's steady arms. She had no memory of the woman who left, but she didn't need it. She had enough right here. I tucked her in one night lantern glow on her soft curls and realized I hadn't thought of Clara in weeks. Not once. The family I thought I'd lost had rebuilt itself out of neighbors, strangers, people who chose to stay. And for the first time in too long, I let myself breathe without waiting for the next blow. Time moved faster, once Lila could run. 3 years slipped by in a blur of scraped knees, late-night jobs, and mornings where Zeke barked orders like a drill sergeant while she giggled at every command. Isabella grew into more than a boss. She was a guardrail. "You're steady, Jonas," she'd say. And I held on to those words tighter than I held my paychecks. Then the letter came. Postmarked from a rehab facility in Portland. My name written in handwriting I hadn't seen since the day she left. Clara. I read it standing at the kitchen counter, lantern burning low beside me. "I want to see her. I'm clean now." That was all it said. No apology, no detail, just those words dangling like bait. For 2 days I carried the letter in my pocket, touching it like a wound that wouldn't close. Zeke saw me fidget and finally growled, "Spit it out." I showed him. He read it once, folded it back, sharp. Supervised, or not at all. His voice was final. Isabella. When I told her, just sighed and said, "Write it down. No phone calls, no promises. Put it on paper where she can't twist it." So I did. I arranged an hour at the County Family Center, staff present, rules clear. The morning of, I told Lila, "Only we're meeting someone important. I'll be there the whole time." She nodded like it was any other errand. The center was 2 bright rugs shaped like puzzle pieces, a clock ticking too loud. Lila held my hand, swinging our arms unbothered. I felt like my chest was full of broken glass. Then Clara walked in. Clean hoodie, ragged sneakers, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. Her eyes darted, searching, then landing on me. "Hey," she said, small, unsure. Lila pressed closer to my leg. Clara nodded at the staffer, then asked, "Can we have 1 minute alone?" "No," I said. My voice didn't shake. "This is how it happens. Or not at all." She pressed her lips tight but sat across from us. At first, she tried soft words, stories about a clinic, how she was working steps, how she'd thought about us every day. But 15 minutes in, her voice shifted. "I'm trying to get back on my feet. I just need a little help with some old debt. 200 maybe, so I can keep my phone on, stay in touch." I stared at her. The staffer's pen didn't pause over the clipboard. Clara smiled weak, like I might rescue her again. "No money," I said flat. "Contact goes through here. That's the only way." She sighed too loud, like I was the problem. She leaned forward as if to hug Lila, but my daughter stepped behind me, gripping my jeans. Clara froze. The staffer slid crayons across the table. "You want to draw with her?" she asked gently. Clara picked up a blue crayon. Lila drew a truck. Clara smiled. It didn't stick. When time was up, Clara's eyes shone wet. "I'll email you," she said. She didn't. Driving home, Lila slept with her fist-curled cheek against the window. I wasn't angry. Not really. Just hollow. Zeke was waiting on the porch, lantern lit. He poured 2 mugs, handed me one. "You kept her safe," he said. "That was the job." And for the first time in years, I knew exactly what my job was. After Clara's visit, the silence in the house was different. Not empty, just clearer. I knew my job: keep Lila safe. Simple. Heavy. And for a few weeks, that was enough. Then another kind of storm rolled in. This one wore a pressed suit and a smug smile. His name was Vernon Pike, chairman of the Fishermen's Association, head of the town's property board, self-appointed king of Newport. He had money charm for the cameras and a reputation for crushing anyone who didn't play by his rules. The first notice came taped to my door. Unsafe structure. Roof violation. Possible eviction. Stamped official. Signed Pike. I knew the roof leaked, but I'd patched it myself, tar and grit holding against the rain. Unsafe was a stretch. 2 days later, Zeke found a similar notice on his container home. Paint violation, it read. Paint. On steel walls that had outlived hurricanes. He snorted, but his jaw set tight. By the 3rd letter, Isabella slammed the paper down on my table. "This isn't random," she said. "He's targeting people who won't bow." We started digging. Zeke had a box of old bylaws, dog-eared and stained. Isabella pulled records from the county clerk. I knocked on doors, listened to stories. Widow Jenkins charged twice for the same maintenance fee. A dockhand told me Pike skimmed from a relief fund after a storm took 3 boats. The pattern was clear. Vernon bled the weak because he could. The town board held monthly meetings closed to non-members. Pike liked it that way, quiet, controlled, but Isabella found the loophole open sessions were required once a quarter. The next was Tuesday. We made copies, highlighted violations, stacked folders high. That night I told Lila, "We've got a meeting." She asked if it was like school. "Sort of," I said, only louder. The hall smelled of burnt coffee and old carpet. Pike sat at the front, gavel in hand, smile thin as wire. "Meeting is closed to comment," he began. I stood anyway. "We want the appeal process in writing." My voice carried farther than I expected. Pike lifted the gavel. Out of order. But Isabella was already spreading papers across the table. "Section 12, Clause 4, she said calmly. "You don't get to shut us out." Murmurs rose from the back. Neighbors. Fishermen. widows. People Pike had thought too tired to fight. Zeke leaned forward, voice gravel deep. You bled us long enough, Vernon. Treat us fair or put it in writing. The room stilled. For once, Pike didn't have a smile ready. One clap started, then another. The board shifted uncomfortable. 5 citations vanished that night, rescinded on the spot. Promises of review for the rest. Pike's face looked like he'd swallowed a hook. We didn't cheer. We walked out, steady heads high. Outside, Lila tugged my hand. Did we win? She asked. I looked at Zeke, at Isabella, at the stack of papers under my arm. We're not done, I told her. But tonight we stood our ground. And for the first time, the town stood with us. After the meeting, the air in town felt different. Folks nodded when I passed, not with pity anymore, but with something closer to respect. Pike still held his title, but his grip had slipped. For once, the fight hadn't ended with us walking home bent over. We'd walked out tall. A week later, Isabella slid a sheet of paper across the workbench. Typed, signed with the crew's lock and key letterhead. Partnership agreement, she said. You've earned it. No more trainee. You're my equal here. I read it twice, thumb tracing the lines. My chest felt tight, like the air had thickened. For years I'd been clawing just to stand still. Now there was ground under me, work that didn't vanish with the tide. I looked up, but Isabella had already turned back to a set of locks, pretending not to watch me. At home, Zeke showed up with the lantern. Same dented brass, same cracked glass. He set it on my table and pushed it toward me. It's yours now, he said. Not alone. Belongs to your family. I opened my mouth to argue, but he shook his head. Don't fight me on this. That light's done its job for me. Now it's your turn. Lila climbed into his lap, then chattering about her toy boats. Zeke listened like every word was gospel, his calloused hand steady on her back. Watching them, I realized the truth he'd become more of a grandfather than she'd ever know elsewhere. No blood needed. Just presence. That summer, the 4 of us tore into the old house. Rotten boards pulled up windows, replaced paint, scrubbed and redone. Lila helped in her own way, passing nails, handing Isabella a screwdriver, smearing paint on her cheeks, until she looked like a warrior. The place began to change. No longer a leaky roof and peeling wallpaper. A home. Clara's name never came up again. No more letters, no more empty promises. That chapter closed quietly like a door you lock and walk away from. One night after the last board was nailed, we sat on the porch. The ocean hissed against the rocks. The lantern burned between us, steady and warm. Isabella sipped coffee. Zeke smoked his pipe. Lila curled against me half asleep, her hair smelling of sawdust and salt. I looked at them, all of them, and felt it settle in my bones. Family isn't the ones who leave. Family is the ones who stay. The ones who pick up tools, patch roofs, hold crying babies, and drink bad coffee beside you. I tightened my arm around Lila and said it out loud, more to myself than anyone else. This is it. This is our family. Zeke grunted. Isabella smiled without looking up, and Lila mumbled something in her sleep that sounded like laughter. The lantern's glow caught their faces, and for the first time I believed it. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were home. This story may have stirred memories or emotions for you. Don't keep them inside. Share your feelings in the comments, and let us know where in the world you're watching from. Your voice helps others feel less alone. If stories like this matter to you, join our growing community by subscribing to Domestic Tragedy today. Together, we turn pain into connection.